Okay, here we go. So again, good evening, everybody. This is the Bay Area Act User Group. We've got a pretty good agenda this evening. I got Diana Thompson, co-sponsor. She's on board as well. We've got some things we're going to kind of walk through. If you've got questions or comments, please send them over on the chat side. We'll do our best to kind of answer those as we go. And then we'll open everything up and unmute everybody here towards the end so we can kind of have a free-flowing Q&A session as well. Like I said before, this is going to be a recorded session. Afterwards, we'll convert the file and get it so it's downloadable so everybody can kind of see it and reference what we're talking about this evening, and so you get a chance to look at it again if you'd like. So again, Dinah, if you've got comments and stuff like that, just go ahead and just jump in. So tonight we're going to do some things that are kind of, a lot of times people forget about things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how do you get data into ACT. So a lot of times what will happen is that you'll go somewhere and have some business cards, or somebody will, write their name and address or something on a pad for you, and then you're trying to get that information in. And what I always try to say is make sure they're not in there already. And so what I like to do is I'll come up to lookup, and I'll go to company, and I'll type in the name of the company that the guy works for. I'll just put in letter B. Let's see what pops up. And so all the ones that will pop up, I'll look down here to make sure that they're not here. So if the guy worked for Boomer's Artwork, I already know that I've got their company record in there. So then what I'll do is I'll look to see which record kind of has the best stuff on it. So in this case, if this is a Boomer's and this is a Boomer's, it looks like, oops, let me go back to the list view again, I'm sorry. It looks like there's better stuff on Emily's record. So I would look up Emily's record and kind of take a look-see, and then look at the business card I have. And if a lot of the stuff matches up, then what I'll do is I'll come up to contacts and do duplicate contact. Now watch what happens. If I click on duplicate contact, it's going to ask me, okay, what things do you want to duplicate? Just the things from the primary fields, or do you want to try to duplicate everything? So I'm going to say duplicate from primary fields. Now watch what happens in the background here. When I say okay, it's going to give me a bunch of the information already filled out. So it's going to save me a lot of time in trying to keyboard everything in there again. And now if I type in Steve Swanson, and I can put in what his title is using the drop downs, I could say, well, he's a buyer. And then over here in ID status, I can say, okay, well, he's the distributor. And now when I say okay and save the record, it's going to add him to Boomer's Artworks, and it's already added all that information in for me automatically. Now, the other thing that I would do is when I'm trying to look up the company, I'm going to look to see if I see the guy's name over here too, because you may get a card from somebody that you don't even know if you have him in ACT or not. So by looking him up, if I don't see his business name, then I'll look up his actual name, and I'm trying to decide whether or not I've already got this guy in the database before I start entering him in, and then I'm going to end up with a duplicate record. So in this case, we found Boomer's. I did a duplicate record, up here in the contacts, duplicate contact, and then use that shortcut to add information in here for me automatically. So that's pretty good. Now, when you click on new over here, it's going to give me a full blank record. So when you see these big buttons over here, these are the major feature sets of ACT. But if I click over here and hit new, it's going to give me a full blank record, and I'll have to fill everything in. So I try to cheat a little bit by checking to see if there's anything I can leverage with data that's already in my database. The other thing you'll notice is that when you hover over some of these buttons, there's a little, down arrow here, and that's telling you that there's some more stuff down there. So if I click on that little down arrow, it tells me that there's a little sub menu that I can also select from. So new, so this would be new contact, new group, new company, new activities, calls, meetings to do. So under new, it's going to default to a new contact, but by using the little drop down thing, I can also type in something else that's new that I wanted to create as well, group, company, whatever I wanted to have. So So long as being able to put information in, always look to see if you've got the guy in there. And if you do, then you're going to update any information from the business card that you got that's been updated. Maybe their phone number's different, or they've moved, so their address is different, and try to update that stuff. Now, here's one thing that's interesting. If I go to the company record, and I can get there because I have a company record created, and I click on this hyperlink, it's going to take me over to Boomer's company record. There are fields in here that will update other fields. And what I mean by that is, I'm just going to make this a silly example here, but let's say they move from suite 25 to suite 68. So if I do this and then I hit the save button, it's going to tell me, oh, you've modified the company record. Do you also want to update all of the contacts that are also linked to this company record? And if I say yes, it's going to change the address and then put in suite 68. If I say no, it's just going to leave all those records alone and just update the one that's on the company level and leave everything else alone. And then if I click on view linked fields, it's going to show me those fields that are about to get updated. So all of these on the company level are going to update all of these on the contact level as soon as I say yes. So you're going to want to know that you want the answer to be yes, because once you say yes, you've said yes. So in some cases, you may have reps that work for a company but actually operate out of different places. So you have to kind of think a little bit about that and think about whether or not you want to have that updated, because as soon as you say yes, it's going to happen. So just for kicks, I'm going to say yes here. I'm going to go bonk. And now all of these records that are connected are all going to update. Now, when I have this company record up in front of me, and if I move my cursor up here to this little magnifying glass and pause for a minute, you're going to see it says create lookup from company. So I could have a bunch of different records behind me, lined up on the contact table or the contact list. But if I come here and I see these 3 records that are here, and then I come up here and I see on the magnifying glass create lookup from company, it's going to replace whatever I had before. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to bring me those 3 records. So now from here, I can drill down into each of them. There's Emily's record, and look at the address, and the ID status is moved, and the same is true of Betty, and the same thing is true of Steve. Now, if you were following me when I created this record originally, I put buyer over here, but you'll notice now it says prospect, and it says prospect because it brought over that entry from the company record over into the contact record. So there you go. So as you're entering information, again, you want to make sure you got the right stuff in here. And you can also do things. I'm going to do a lookup of all contacts, look up all contacts, and this is going to bring me all 202 records. As you're looking down here, you're also going to find from time to time that you've got the same company record in there twice. So I'm going to make up a story here for a minute, and I'm going to say this one says Christy Cameron, and let's just for kicks say this one also says Christy Cameron, and so I've got her in here twice. So one thing I can do is I can highlight both of them like that, and then I can say look up selected. Now I'm down to the 2 records. All the other ones that were in that list haven't been deleted. Nothing bad's happened to them. They've just been pushed off to the side for a minute or two while I concentrate on just these 2 records. And now if I say tools, copy, move contact data, it's going to allow me to blend these 2 records and have a surviving record of that has the best stuff in it. So again, we're going to pretend that both of these say Christy. So I would say, okay, well, I want this Christy record and I want this Christy record, and I want to end up combining those 2 things. So I go next, and then it's going to ask me what record, what do you want to copy from one to the other? So the idea here is as you're looking down here, you're going to be looking for which side has the better information in it. And as I look down here, you'll notice that this one's got some more information in it. That looks the same. This one doesn't have that information, so there's some more data that's different. And otherwise, so here's some more stuff that's different. So it looks like contact 2 has the better information in it. So I'm going to select this one here, and it's going to swap these 2 records, one for the other. So I'm going to click on this. Watch what happens. I'm going to click on this, and now this record's over here. And the idea here is you want to make these records the same. And I'll stop so I don't actually wipe out Haley's record here. But if I go next now, and I come down here, I'm looking for information that's different. So you can see this one's different. It's blank over here. I've got stuff here, so I'm going to hit copy and see how I move that over. And then if I come down here, I go, okay, all that looks good. Oh, here's something different. So I click in here and I go copy. Now that has that over there. So now I got these records, and I say, okay, the mobile phone, this one's right. So I hit copy again, and it's blending this over here. So then when I say next, and I'm going to stop here for a minute, but now if I say next, it's going to give me a warning and say, okay, now we're going to leave this one record as the surviving record, and we're going to delete the other one, and you're going to end up with 1 record instead of 2. So as soon as I say yes to that, you're going to end up with 1 Christie record. The other one that's a duplicate goes away, but I've had an opportunity to put the field data that I wanted into the surviving record. The other thing that it will do is it will blend or merge any of the notes, history, and activities that are on both contact records. It'll blend them so that they're on the surviving record, so I don't lose any of that information as well. So I'm going to hit cancel here to come out of here. So the idea is that if you end up with records that are duplicates, you can blend them together and get going again. Now, if you had a bunch of them, you know, this was a Christie record, this one's a Christie record, this one's a Christie record, this one's a Christie record, you're going to have to go around on this a couple of times because ACT only allows you to blend 2 records at a time. So I would have to blend the first ones, then blend the next one, and then blend the next one. Then in the end, I'm going to end up with 1, and 3 of the extra Christie records are going to go away. Okay, so entering information, look them up first, make sure that they're not in the database. If they're not, then you can hit new and give you a completely blank contact record to put information in. If you do look them up and the same company is there, cheat and try to look and see which one's got the best data, and then do contacts, duplicate contact, and then save yourself a ton of keystrokes by getting a head start on some of the information that you might want to put in already. So there you go. So entering contact information, fast and easy. So now the other thing is that once you got stuff in there, what are you going to do with it? Well, in many cases, you're going to want to find and look up information once it's been placed into your database. And there's a bunch of ways to do that. One of them is if you come over here to the lookup menu selection right here, these are all of the fast ways that you can look up information in ACT. So for instance, if I said, look up first name, and if I put in Steve, here's 2 Steves. So then I go, oh, Steve Reese, that's the guy I wanted. So now that I got the list up, I can double click on Steve's record, and it's going to bring me right to his contact record. So obviously your databases are going to have more than 200 records. So you might have thousands of records in your database. And when you do look up Steve, you might have 50. So then you're going to want to look down and go, oh, Steve Reese, that's the guy I want, and double click on him, and up he goes. You can do the same thing with last name. So I can do last name, and I can do, hopefully you get a Jones in here. So last name, Jones. Nope, look, let's try Smith. And okay, there's one Smith. So if there's only one result, it's going to display on the screen in the detail view. The detail view is the business card view. If there's more than one result, then it's going to go to the list view, and then you'll pick the one that you want. So looking up first name, last name, that's pretty easy. They've also done one thing. I'm going to do, look up all contacts again. They've also utilized this area here where you can start to type in information. So if I type in Craig and hit enter, it's going to bring up all of the records where the contact field contains Craig. So if you look over here, you're going to see that in this case, the guy's first name was Craig. And in this case, the guy's last name was Craig. So in both records had Craig in it. So when I did a lookup of the contact, in the contact field, find me people that had Craig in there, that's why it brought up these two records. So if I would have done first name Craig, it just would have brought up this guy, and not this one. And if I said last name Craig, it would have brought up Bill Craig and not the first one. So again, there's different ways you can look up information, and sometimes you can find things differently by thinking about how you want to bring up the information. So back up here, I can do state, show me everybody in Texas, city, show me everybody in San Francisco, you know, the phone number if I know the main phone number, ID status, show me everybody that's a buyer, show me everybody that's a prospect, and that kind of thing. You can also use this drop-down menu here and get to all of the different fields inside of the database and select something that you're looking for. So I mean, this is kind of a silly example here, but here's pet names. So if I knew that, you know, Bosco was the name, a pet name that I was looking for, and I got 5,000 records, I could type in Bosco, and it's going to find under that records fields for pet name Bosco. Boop, there, and there's the record. It's going to pop that record up for me. So the default is always going to be contact, but you can use this drop down and look up all kinds of different information as well. Okay, so far so good. So yeah, go ahead.
One of my favorite, and I think you might have showed me this, but how about all phone numbers?
Okay, so so are you talking about going here and going here?
Nope. Let me show you for a second. Okay, would you go click over there under your contact drop down, contact field drop down?
Yeah.
Hit the letter A for all, or any. I'm sorry, any.
Yeah.
See.
There we go. There we go.
Any phone. So, have you ever gotten a phone number where you can't find or you can't remember who that phone number was? You can go in and type that phone number in here, and it'll look in every phone field in the ACT database. And if it occurs, you've nailed that phone number down to one of your contacts.
Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this. I went a little too fancy here, but you'll notice I typed in 480. Mm-hmm. I'm cheating a little bit because you can see this record we already know has a 480 in it. So I typed in 480 over here. Now if I hit go, let's watch what happens. So here's all of them, and you'll notice, just based on what Dinah just said, that record does not have a 480 in it, but one of the phone fields does. So that's why it popped up here. So all these guys have 408s, a bunch of them do. 480, I'm sorry, 480. This one doesn't, this one doesn't, but this one doesn't, like we said, and this one doesn't. But on their contact record, it does somewhere. So that's pretty good. So yeah, so if you get a call from somebody and you go, who the heck is this guy? You can search and look around and see if you can't find them. And here it is on Melanie. Here's the 480 back in here on her home phone. So great tip. Anything else you can think of, Dinah, that you'd like to talk about in terms of lookups?
No, the other thing that I love to do is teach people to, if they're looking at a single contact and let's say you're going to New Jersey, you could right click and do a lookup on the New Jersey field, the state field, or you could go into the zip code, right click on that and look for the 07701, and you could get a list of everybody that's going to be in that proximity. So if you're making sales calls, it's a pretty handy thing to do.
Yeah. So what she's talking about now is you've got all these ways you can look stuff up, but also you can go right into the field, and by clicking in the field and doing a right mouse click, it's going to say look up state. And ACT knows I want to look up state because I clicked in the field first. So since I clicked in here, ACT knows that I'm interested in doing something with the state field. And now if I do a right mouse click, it's going to give me a look up state And then if I go here, I'll have a drop down of all of the different ones I can select from my drop down list. And then if I go to New Jersey, there we go. If I go here, then it's going to give me all of the ones that are there. So following with Dinah's story, if I know I'm going to be in New Jersey, here's a couple of clients I might be able to call on while I'm there. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So the ability of doing right clicks and then looking up information, cities, state, zip codes, all that stuff is really great. Now, one of the things that Dinah and I would both tell you is always try to have the ID status have information in it. And the purpose of ID status is to designate what kind of a record it is. So, is this a prospect? Is this a vendor? Is this a reseller? Is this a personal contact? What is this contact record? And the worst thing you can do is have a bunch of records in your database and you don't know who they are. And you don't know who they are because you forgot to put something in ID status. So just for kicks, I'm going to come up into ID status. I'm going to do a right mouse click, do look up ID status. And then if I go over here, I can use these drop downs and also find different kinds of information. So if I'm looking for blanks, I'm going to say ID status does not contain data. That's going to be blank. Now, if I'm going to say, okay, let's see what pops up. Okay, so there's 4 of them. So if I drill down into these 4, I don't know. Here's Joshua Burley. Okay, I got some information on him. I don't have any phone, don't have any email. I can look under notes and history here, under notes here, and history and notes. Look under activity. Like, okay, well, here we go. So apparently we had an activity back in May that we didn't do, but I don't really know who this guy is. So you're going to use your drop downs that you can modify under edit list, and I can take out the things I like and take out the things I don't like and put in the things I like. And at some point in time, I may say, okay, well, this guy was a lead. So I can go down here and I can type in lead. Now I know who he is. So periodically, just in terms of trying to maintain and keep your database up to speed, just keep looking to see if you've got any blank ID status records, and then just go in and just keep cleaning it up so that you've got good data inside of your database. I'm going as fast as I can. Okay, and then these lookups, in terms of being able to do lookups and all these things, and then using the drop down like Daniel was talking about, doing any, oh, by the way, the any also works with email addresses. So any email address, because somebody might have a couple of different email addresses, and if in fact they've got a personal email right there, a personal email address, or a secondary email address. So depending on how your database is set up, you've got an email field here and an email field here. And using that same trick with you're looking at phones, you can also look at email addresses and find email addresses as well. But as you're bopping along here and you're doing all these kinds of lookups, there's also a couple more that are kind of cool. One of them is over here. So if I click over here in this search area, this is like a global search thing. So I'm going to type in, I'll just type in Craig because we talked about Craig a minute ago. And if I hit the OK button, the go button, it's going to look for oops, what happened? Oh, that's great. It closed down. Okay, there we go. That's great. Let me fire that back up again. It's going to bring up all those instances where you can see Craig, and it may be in a contact, it may be in a notes and history field, it could be anywhere in the database, and it's going to bring up records that match that criteria. So if we were golfers and we went out and played golf all the time, I could type in golf, and then anybody that ever had anything to do with golf, I'll be able to find those contact records. Let's see if I can do that. Golf. Oh, that's going to be a great night, folks. We got these things. Welcome to technology. Okay, so it's going to bring up a list of all of those instances of records and places that have golf, and then I can create a lookup of those contact records and then do something with it. So there's all the people that had some kind of a mention of golf into their contact records.
So, Bud, while this is rebooting, I have a couple of comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
You might imagine. I was going to ask you what version of ACT you're on right now, which update rev, and it led to a question I get calls about probably weekly, and people say, oh, I got this little pop-up that says there's an ACT update available, and I go to install it, and it says I don't have permission to download or install. Ha! So you already have the latest version,
right?
But
yeah. So did you want to talk about what somebody would do then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So a couple of things. When you get that message, depending on whether you're in a corporate setting or not, yours might say there's an update available versus the product update. It says you already have the latest. But if you're in a corporate version, you're going to have to get your IT guy to help you run ACT in administrative mode. Otherwise, you want to go down to your ACT icon and right-click on that icon. Yeah, thank you, Bud. Right-click on your ACT icon and tell it to run as administrator. Now it's not
depending on the icon that you have.
Yeah.
It may say it right here, run as administrator, or in some cases, like you can see on mine, it doesn't say that. So you have to go here and you have to do it again.
Yep.
Right.
Right-click on there. It won't let you since it's already running. There you go. Run as administrator. So I mean, that's, if you can do that and you're not in a corporate environment, it's going to let you run as administrator. It'll let you register your software and also allow you to run your updates. I don't recommend you run it as administrator all the time unless you're running Pro, because I've just found out with this latest version of Pro, you cannot schedule backups, etc., if you're not running ACT as an administrator. You can't set up your schedule, your backups, etc., if you're not running as administrator when you try to schedule those ACT scheduler. Any comments, Bud?
Okay, so a couple of things to be wary of. If in fact and again, if you go up to help and then you go to ACT notifications, this is where that little window will pop up. So if you've already closed it by clicking on this, you're going to go, how do I get that window back? If you go up to help and then ACT notifications, this will come up. The other thing I'll warn you about is if in fact you get that, I would, and if you're in a single user environment, okay, it's just yours, cool. If you're in a multi-user environment where there's 5 or 6 of you that are all using ACT, that kind of thing, you always want to make sure that whatever you do together. So one of you isn't updating and the other ones aren't, or or they all update but you didn't get to, or something like that, because some of these updates actually change the database schema, the structure of the database. And then also, if you said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do this update, and you change the database and nobody else in the office knew that, they try to log into ACT and it's going to say, oh, you're not on, you can't play, you're on a different version or something, and everyone's going to be screaming. So if you see that an updated version is available, then you want to make sure that everybody is locked arm in arm and you guys are all going to update together so that there isn't anybody getting left behind and won't be able to log on to the database. Okay, any other comments about that one, Dinah?
No, I just think that that's one of those very common things that happen. And if you're not running as administrator, or you're locked out from running an application as administrator, you aren't a local machine administrator, it's a problem. So know that if you can't right click and do that, run as administrator, you're going to have to go to your IT guy in the office or whatever and let you do it. But Those are common everyday issues, right, Bud?
Yep, yep. Okay, so we've got a couple of good feature sets that we also want to now try to cover today. One of them is when you are selling stuff. So ACT has the capability of also doing opportunity management, meaning I'm managing my deals and things that I try to sell. And so if I go into opportunities over here on my nav bar, it's going to bring up a list of anything that I've got that I'm currently have an opportunity for. If I double click on any of these, it's going to drop down into the detail of that and show me different information, including what's the status, this one's open, what's the name of the opportunity, by the way, what's the open date, how many days has it been open, all of that stuff. And I've got some tabs down below here that also tell me more information. Let me close this window. So I can also schedule calls, meetings, to-dos, and that kind of stuff with people, but also against opportunities. I can also create notes against an opportunity. I can put people in play with an opportunity. So in this case, I've got Sean Duffy. You can see that he's on the contacts tab. If I hot link over to Sean Duffy by clicking on his name, it's going to flash me over to Sean Duffy's contact record. And then under opportunities, it's going to show me all the opportunities that I'm currently working on with him. So I can double click on any of these, and then it's going to flash me back over to the opportunity side with different opportunities. So here you can attach different people. I can add and remove contacts. So I can say, okay, I also want this guy in there. And just by doing that, it puts him in the opportunity as well. I can do follow-up stuff, and because I have Sean's record up, it tries to fill in a bunch of this stuff for me already, and has associated it with that opportunity already too. So it saves me some steps in terms of linking activities against a particular opportunity. But you've also got the ability to decide what you want to have in terms of products or services, and I can put those in here. Now this is a closed one, so it's not gonna like me making any change. There we go. So I can add and delete information and add products and services to it. But one of the things that a lot of people want to know, and then based on what the stage is, the numbers that you see over here are going to change. So a lot of people have questions about, I don't quite understand how I set this up. So you've got different sales processes that you can create. And as you create a sales process, there are stages that are going to go along with it. So let's pretend, for instance, that we do outside sales. We go on the street and we make sales calls with people. That process, me walking in, introducing myself, maybe giving them some literature that out of the trunk of my car, and then maybe even doing some work while I'm there because I'm there. That's a very different set of stages or steps that you might have with an opportunity versus someone that's just on the phone at the office making phone calls. So there may be different steps or stages depending on the approach of what we do with our business. So you have the ability to make different sales processes, and then based on which one you select, then the stages can be different depending on which one you select. As you select those, and I'm laying this out because then I'll show you how it works here. Depending on which sales stage you select, it's going to change the probability number that you see here. Once I select that, it's then going to change the numbers that you see over here. So in this case, we're using the sales process called CHT1 sales. And if I pull this down, you're going to see there's a couple of different sales processes in this database. We're using this one called sales. Because I'm using that one called sales, these are all of the different stages that go along with that sales process. As I select or move somebody further along on those stages, then all these numbers are going to start moving for me. So you'll notice that this says 10%. So because I just walked in and said hi. Now after I do that, I might sit down and say, well, tell me where it hurts. And after I do that, now maybe the deal is moved up a little bit on the likelihood that we're going to close something. Now it's at 25%. And as I do that, these numbers change over here too. So the total amount of money in play is $4,500, but 25% of that's $1,125. So in terms of me trying to figure out how I'm doing on my sales pipeline, I'm using these numbers to determine that. So now from the needs assessment, now I'm going to go actually do a formal presentation for them. And now the numbers jump to 40%. And now my weighted probability is now jumped to 1,800. And then if I go, okay, well now they like everything I do. They like my smile. They like how I'm hipping and jiving, and they're getting hot and bothered. So now we're negotiating this deal, and now I'm at 65%, and I'm talking about terms and when you want to have delivery and all that kind of stuff. And they're still liking what's going on over here. And then they go have a little chat in the other room, and then they come back and they go, yeah, we think we want to get this thing. And now it's jumped up to 80%. And now the weighted probability has jumped to $3,600. So all of this stuff is customizable by you, and you can make your own sales processes. So if I go over here to opportunities and I go down here to manage processes, these are the two that are currently in this database. So if I type in here, I'll just type in beta just to have something to do. I type in beta, these are the stages that I can put in. So stage number 1, I can click on here and I can go, well, that's going to be worth 15%. And then I go stage number 2. And again, I'm going to put different words in here, but I'm trying to save some time here. So over here, I'm going to say, okay, well, now we're at 30%. And I'm going to say, okay, stage number 3, now we're at 75%. And stage number 4, now we're at 80%. And now whoops, over here, whoops, I'll see, new stage 4. And over here, I'm going to say 80%. And now we're good. Okay, so now I've got this new thing, and it's going to have all these different stages in it. I can then apply it to anything I want to apply it to. So I can even come back to this one now and say, okay, well, now that I've got this new sales process, I'm going to click on beta here, and I'm going to move him all the way to stage 3, and it's already changed the probability and changed the weighted stuff. So you can develop your own sales process or service process, add the stages that go along with that, and then start managing your pipeline as to who is it, what do they want, when do I have to deliver it, and where am I at in the sales process with them? Am I at the contract level? Am I at the commitment level? Where am I? And then you can make this fit exactly the way you guys do business. That's the intent there. Okay, any comment you want to make about that, Dinah?
I muted so I wouldn't disturb anybody. And I was actually reading the messages from Ed and Frank. So no, I think that's pretty crystal clear. Anybody else have questions? Type them up on the message.
Yeah. And then you said guys had some comments. Would anybody say anything that we'd want to talk about?
What for a 1 or 2 company? What cloud backup do you recommend? And I personally still like Carbonite. It isn't perfect, nothing is, but they do a pretty darn good job in my world. How about you, Bud?
Well, I think it kind of depends on what it is you want to back up, because what you could do something super simple. For instance, if you had Dropbox, and then what you could do is you could set up a deal where I say database backup, and then I can browse for my Dropbox. Oops. There. Dropbox.
Yeah. And do your backup
and I can say act backups, and I can do your backups right here. And then that's going to make it fast and easy because it's local, and then it's going to move it up to the cloud. So if you ever did have a problem, you'd be able to go to your Dropbox and download your backup, your Act backups. So if you did this on a scheduler, then every night at 2 a.m. or something like that, it's going to make a backup, push it up to your Dropbox, and then you could even say, I only want to save the next 5 or the next 7, and then if you said 7, as soon as it gets to number 8, it drops off the oldest one, and so you always have 7 current backups that are sitting in Dropbox if you ever had a problem. Now that's different than Carbonite, where you can do a lot more backup-y stuff, so you can do all your My Documents and all your Windows files and image your system so that you've got that all on Carbonite. So all of that is cool, and so what Dinah's talking about is something a little more sophisticated than what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about if you want to get your Act backup somewhere where it's going to be nice and safe, man, just doing something in Dropbox or iDrive or something like that is going to be fine.
By the way, Bud, the next question, which you probably can address too, is Ed Blake says he's noticing that you are running Premium Plus, and how does this version differ from those who are not running Plus or running Premium or Pro? And I think from what I've seen just right now, what Bud's showing you is pretty vanilla. It goes across the board from Pro to Premium to Plus. We haven't touched on anything that's Plus only.
Correct. And some of the stuff with Plus is Act's attempt to provide more value and more capabilities to people that need something a little bit more. So Premium Plus has things like custom tables, and that might give you the ability to have more data stored in a way that you can't get it done in Act by itself. So I'll just take a couple seconds and show you an example of that. So I'll bounce over to my database. And inside of Act, as you guys all know, there's fields, and fields are what I call one-up, meaning that if you made a field and you called it account number, it's a field that can hold data, and the label says account number. And then as you put in information into that field, it's going to sit there. So for instance, I'm just going to click here and I'm going to say, okay, for instance, let's pretend that this one that says address 1 was called account number. And whatever I put in here, that's going to be the account number. Well, I can only put that in once. And then if I wanted to put it in again, I could overwrite this, clear this out and overwrite it, or I can put something on the back end or the front end of it, but it's basically one container of information. So what Plus can do is it can actually give you another, so if I look at notes in history are many line items against a contact record. So instead of having one place to put account number, in this case, I've got many rows of history or many rows of notes or many activities. So what they've done is they've given you the ability to also do something similar with tables. So I have one here that I called support, and the idea would be if somebody called, I could open up support tickets against a contact record, and then this is going to be a screen that I've developed that has fields in it as well, like, okay, when am I creating the support ticket? When did I edit it? What's the number of the support ticket? What's the drop-down status of it? Well, this one's in process or something like that. And then do I have to do any activities with it? And then are there any notes that I want to have with it? So if I say okay to this, I can now have many support tickets against one contact record. So that's an example of one of the Premium Plus capabilities that you don't get with just vanilla out of the box ACT stuff on either Pro or regular Premium. This is kind of an updated part of it. So that's a big thing, by the way, the ability to have extra places to put things. You know, if we did, I'm trying to think of that. We have a member of our user group that does elevators. So so what he does is he creates contact records for all of the elevators. Well, if he had one contact record for the location, but then over here, he could have multiple line items that were each of the elevators, he could then increase the management capability of what he's able to do by utilizing the tables against a single contact record, as opposed to having a zillion contact records. So again, that's where they're going. They're trying to expand the capabilities that someone might be able to do and provide and expand with ACT. You know, if you were a realtor, you could have a tab that had a buyer's interest and all of the different things that a buyer might be interested in. And then the offset of that could be the seller. What kinds of things are the sellers trying to, they have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,700 square feet, whatever it is. So you could put all that stuff into that contact screen under real estate to sell, real estate to buy, and then you could be managing those processes against multiple properties, all inside of ACT. So again, that's the idea of where that's trying to go, and an example of what Premium Plus can provide. There's more things coming along the way, by the way, and I hope before the end of the year, one of our sessions here, I can kind of show you some fasten your seatbelt kind of stuff, but we're not ready for that one yet. So that's that. Okay, so that was the pipeline one. Now I'm going to bounce back over to that demo one because I want to play around one more time with managing your calendar. So we got information in. We know how to look stuff up and find it. We talked a little bit about selling stuff by managing your sales process and putting something together that has stages that you might want to go. But we also have to do follow-ups. We have to, schedule calls, meetings, and to-dos, and that kind of stuff. So you're going to have the big buttons up at the top here that provide a lot of that capability for you. And if I click on any of these, it's going to help me by filling in a bunch of the stuff. So I'm going to click on call for a minute, and it's going to fill in a bunch of things for me. It's going to fill in call because I clicked on the call button. It fills in today's date. It fills in the time, which I can change. I can change all this. I can say, well, I'm going to call him tomorrow. And I can say, okay, and I'm also going to call him at 9 o'clock in the morning. And it says Chris Huffman, and Chris Huffman's back here. It's because I'm on his record that it already knows I'm on Chris Huffman's record. So it puts the guy's name in there for me. And now I can use another drop down, and all of these have to do with calls. So I could say, well, I want to do a follow-up with him. And then I say, okay. So now it's under the activities tab. It's going to have that activity that I have scheduled. This could also be a place where you're going to have multiple or more activities that you're going to see here that are going to be tied to this contact record. Once I clear this, by clicking on this box here and hitting clear, I can type in some notes about the call. And then when I say okay, it's going to take it off of the activities tab, and it's going to plant it over on the history side. It's going to end up over here. So these are things that have happened and all cleared and all done. And then over here, things that aren't done and are still open. These are going to remain here until you do something with them. So they're going to, this date could be a year ago in the past, but it's still going to sit here because you haven't done anything with it yet. But on this contact record, against that contact record, I've got an activity. And if I go over here to calendars, it's going to show me right there. That's that follow-up. So if I click on that, it's going to show me now because that's our record. It doesn't show me the name, but somebody else's name, like this one, for instance, it's going to show me the guy's name and all that stuff. But on your own your own stuff tied against your own my record, you're not going to see the name there because it's you. So if I'm over here on Joe's thing, for instance, I can see all that stuff for Joe. I can double click on it, see more information, even details, if it's a recurring event, all of that stuff. I can also, you guys know I was on Chris Huffman's record, but if I do a right mouse click on any of these activities, I can click on go to contact, and it's going to flash me over to Joe's record, and there it is. And now I'm on Joe's record and can manage anything I want to manage on Joe's information. Look at all these activities I got open here for Joe. So if I go back to the calendar, I can do a right mouse click. I can clear stuff. I can reschedule stuff. I can go to the contact record. I can do all of that right from here with a right mouse click, but I can also reschedule by just dragging and dropping. So I can go over here and say, I'm going to move it over to that. You can also do something that a lot of people haven't seen before, but if I highlight this and I do Control C and Control V, it's going to do a copy and a paste, and I can also then move it around. There we go. So it's going to give me, so Control C, copy, Control V, paste it, gives me another one, and I can say, okay, I also want to call them again later in the day. So instead of going in and doing all the rigmarole of another whole thing, I can just go bingo, bingo, and I've got an extra one that I can now reschedule like that. So in addition to all of that, oh, by the way, if I go into here and I can say, okay, this is a meeting, I really don't think I have to go. Maybe I can just call them. I can just drop this down, this drop-down menu, change this to call, and now it's been designated, instead of a meeting, it's going to be designated as a call. If I use the drop-down menu, when that's a meeting, all of the things in the drop-down menu are all meeting stuff. But now that I've changed it to call, all of the stuff in the drop-down menu are now all call stuff. So now I can say call, I'm going to say get the order, and I can do that. And I've actually reformatted that whole activity just with a couple of clicks, from a meeting to a phone call with a different regarding. In almost every other CRM that I'm familiar with, you have to basically delete this thing and start all over again in order to change one from a meeting to a call. You have to kill the meeting, start all over again to do a call. And with that, you can just double click it and change it around to something else. And you can change it back to a meeting. And then this is now drop down meeting stuff. And now I've rescheduled it as a meeting with meeting information. So that's pretty cool. In addition to that, I'm gonna try to go quick here and wrap this part up. In addition to that, there may be instances where you've decided that there are best practices or best ways for you to do what it is you do. Here's an example. You may get a lead that's somebody that comes into the office. So you might want to return that call. Then after that, I want to send the guy a follow-up email and have an attachment that might have some of our literature with it. Then 3 days after that, I want to then call them back and say, hey, did you get a chance to look at my email? Do you have any questions about the information that was attached with it? And then a week after that, you might want to send another follow-up email just to kind of check in. So those are things that you've proven over time helps you move the ball forward in your relationship with building building a relationship up with your contacts. So what you can do is you can go under schedule, activity series, and these are different activity series that you can then make and develop. So for instance, this one says new customer. So if I schedule this, I can do next. What do I usually do next? You can tie all of these activities around with a ribbon, call it a name that's easy for you to remember, and then it's going to schedule all these things for you in one shot. So that's new customer one. If I do new prospect, see all this changed, and now I have a different set of things to do. And if you're in a multi-user environment, you can even schedule things for different people. So Melissa's going to do this, Chris is going to do this, and then it's back to Melissa to do this. So I can just go ahead and schedule this with Joe. I'm going to say it's on Monday. And then if I say okay, and if I flash over to Monday, it's going to start to show me things that are going to start happening with Joe right here. So that's really pretty cool in terms of being able to start setting up activity series. And here's where you build the activity. Let me do it again so you can see where I went, so it's not secret. Schedule, manage, activity series templates, and here's where you begin to build what it is you want to do. So I'm going to I'll put down beta again, just to put a name in here and go beta. And then I'm going to go next. And then here's where I can start to build any kind of activity that I want to have: calls, meetings, to-dos. What it's about? Do I want to go a day ahead, a week ahead? Where do I want to have it? What's it about? Who's it with? And then I can start to build this thing and have, 3, 4, 5, 6 things all ready to go. I schedule it against the contact record, and all of those things are going to be fired up and ready to go in one shot. Super powerful and works really well. The other thing that happens is, and I'll go to Joe's record here, if in fact you find yourself where you're kind of getting behind the 8 ball over here, you can also do things where you can reschedule things that are part of an activity series. And as you reschedule them, here's an activity series. If I was to reschedule this and say, I'm not going to be able to do that, I'm just too busy, so you might move him to later in the week, it's going to say, hey, this is part of an activity series. Do you just want to move the one thing, or do you want to keep the train intact? So it's 1 day, then 7 days, then 14 days. Do you want to keep all that intact, or do you just want to break this thing off by itself? So if you say update the series and you say, okay, it's going to reschedule all those things back out in that same time frame that you had also set up. And I'm going to tell you, again, a lot of different CRM systems, you can't do that either. You have to reschedule every doggone thing by themselves. So very powerful, very cool. I love using activity series. So that was our getting things done. I'm gonna unmute everybody for a minute here, and then if I'll open it up, if anybody has any questions, everybody should be good to go. If you've got some background stuff, please mute yourself if you're not going to say anything. If you have questions, go ahead and fire away.
So Bud, I have a comment. A lot of echo going on. So I would like to recommend that people go open their.
I think I meant Dana. Go start over again, Dana. I muted everybody again. Go again.
Okay, so I want to say, one of the things that I run into over and over again is clients, even with bigger, faster computers, they're running a task list that goes back to 2002. And the way they're managing to look at their task list so they don't lose their minds is they're looking at today or today in the future. But just as a matter of good housekeeping, all of you should occasionally go into your task list and take a look at how many things are haunting your system. Because if you look at all dates, I'll bet money that 50% or more of you have stuff with past dates that are up to 5 or 6 years or longer, depending on how long you've used ACT, in the sort of that should be archived, that should be cleared. And one of the nice things is that in the task list, it takes a little while. I usually tell people to do it before their lunch break or before they sign off for the day. They can just start clearing a bunch of tasks, and they can start with like, I don't know, March and go through July and assume that you've finished those tasks, the meetings, etc. we don't want to think ill of you. So you go through and assume that they've been completed. You click on the first one, shift click on the last one in the series that you're pretty sure you've accomplished, and then right click on them to say clear multiple activities. And you can make the assumption either way, it's your database, but clear multiple activities and say that you've either completed or not those tasks, and it'll take them basically take that 800-pound gorilla off of the system, because every time you go to the task list, it's going to index all of those old, what should have been archived or closed calls, meetings, or to-dos. And the other thing I was going to say, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bud.
No, go ahead, Donna, finish up.
Okay, so I think Frank asked about when does the main screen show the date that it's cleared, that I'm pretty sure it's I'm noting, see, on the front page, where is the list last call, meeting, and to-do date change? And that's, if you don't clear it here in the activities, or you don't clear it in the task list, the system doesn't assume it's completed and it won't put a date on it. But when you clear it, it's going to tell you when you last called, when you last met, and when your last to-do was done. So those are system generated as you clear activities. So if you really want to know what your call attempt, call reached, meetings, and letters sent, and all that, those are generated by the system as you clear or complete a task that pertains to that information. Does that, hopefully that helped Frank a little bit. Anybody else have questions? Or Bud, did you want to elaborate?
No, the other thing that's kind of interesting, and Dinah's exactly right. These gray fields here aren't ones that you update. It gets updated automatically as you're using the system and clearing activities. This will all start to populate on its own. There's also another one down here that's got also system fields, and one of them is create date and one of them is edit date. So what's kind of cool about the edit date is you can come over here to edit date and you can say, show me everything that's older than 365. And now when you say okay to that, it's going to give you a list of the contact records in your database that have not been touched and edited within a year. So if you've got 3,000 records, how many of them haven't yet had any interaction with? Using that search criteria right there under the edit date, right mouse click, older than 365. That's gonna be a little eye opener. Believe me. You guys try that one tomorrow morning and go, oh my goodness, because that'll be an eye opener as to how many records are in your database that you haven't even had an opportunity to touch within the last year. Big. That's big. Okay, well we're at 8:07, so that we went just a little bit over, but I think we had some pretty good action-packed stuff. Dinah, don't you think that was pretty good, huh? I think we did good.
Yeah,
tonight.
Good questions too.
Yeah, so so after we hang up here, I'm going to stop the tape here in a second, and then I'll start trying to do the conversion and stuff, and then everybody on the thing will be able to get a link to the session. You'll be able to reference it again, because sometimes we go through this fairly quick, and you might want to revisit and look at one of the topics again a little bit slower and a little bit more in detail for yourself. So thank you, everybody. Dinah, thank you very much for your time this evening as well, and keep your eyes open for our next session. What are we in August? So October will be our next one, probably the third week or so, somewhere in there in October, and look forward to seeing everybody. So thank you very much, everyone, and good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bud. Good night.
Bye-bye.